Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April 23rd Financial Town Hall, or otherwise known as Just Ask Jen. I'm Jen Wagner. I'm the Treasurer and Chief Financial Officer. And tonight's topic is going to be around donations, fundraising, and crowdfunding. We've been getting a lot of questions, especially as we talk about budget cuts. And so we just wanted to go through some of the policies and definitions and the differences in what's allowable and what's not allowable. And so if you want to hit the next slide, oh, we were going to do introductions. So to my right,
Michael Guston, Assistant Treasurer.
Michael, thank you. To my left,
Dr. Kareem Moffitt, CPS board member.
Brandon Craig, CPS board member.
Good evening, everyone. Lauren Roberts, Chief Audit Executive.
and tonight, Lauren, this is her first time being on stage with us, and we have her here as our internal audit expert because she has a lot of input on these policies and communicating and making sure that we're going to be in alignment with the state auditor's office. So we don't want to get in trouble. So will you do your normal engagement slide, please?
Yes, I haven't done it in so long. I don't exactly know what I said before, but we are so happy to have. Is it okay? Okay. We are so happy to have you all participate with us. This is such an awesome opportunity for the community to find out about the finances of the district. And we've got the best professionals ever here. So if you want to join us or ask a question, if you want to join us in this wonderful auditorium, there's some seats left. So you can definitely come on in, come down to Burnett. But if you want to stay on Zoom, please feel free to raise your hand when you have a question. And the chat moderator, we've got two awesome ones over there. They will weed through all the crowd and get to your question. If you are in person, you can always come down to the mic and we will take it from there. But you can also comment on Facebook. So if you do have a question on Facebook, put it in the chat and we will get to it. So I think we're ready.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so tonight, as we said, our topics for tonight are donations, fundraising, and crowdfunding. And I'm going to pass the mic. Mike's going to get us started off with definitions.
Sure. Next slide, please. So just tonight, we're going to work basically in three areas and three definitions. So first one are donations. So donation is goods or money that's freely given to a school or the district and accepted by the administration of the board. Wherever possible, the wishes of the donor are respected. Crowdsourcing or crowdfunding, as it's called, is a subset of that. So it's a special way that the district gets donations. There's a lot of places that do this. Probably the biggest one's called Donors Choose that you might be familiar with. And so a group of people gets together to purchase items for a school or a classroom. And then the final definition is fundraising. So in our definition, our fundraising refers to non-school organizations out there that raise money to support school activities. Once they raise those monies and acquire items to us, then those things also fall under our donations umbrella. Next slide, please. And then the final thing that people may have questions about is donations versus grants. So a lot of times these are used interchangeably, especially kind of if you're not in the weeds like we are. The real difference is with grants usually have an application process. So there's some sort of application. Donations and grants can both have restricted use. And a lot of times grants also are going to come from a foundation or organization, where a donation can come from a person or an organization.
Thanks, Mike. So what is acceptable or not acceptable? You hit the next slide. So prohibited items, things are never acceptable, is we used to have an experience where a lot of companies would want to go do a technology refresh and they'd want to donate their old stuff to us, but it was actually older than the stuff that we had. And so we don't accept those. There is an application for technology donation that the tech department will go through. But we're never allowed to accept alcohol. And gift cards, and gift cards, because that's one area that it seems so easy to do and it's such a popular concept, but we are never allowed to accept gift cards. Another area is compensation of an employee. We've had occasion where somebody, like we had a super principal or administrator of the building, and a local organization wanted to give them more money than their salary. And that's a violation of the Ohio ethics law. And so you cannot compensate an employee on top of what they're already doing for the district. Also, anything that does not comply with proper public purpose, which the state auditor defines as continuing the education of a child. And so if you can't answer that question, it's probably not a proper public purpose. And then anything that would violate board policy. So we're going to go through some of the policies a little bit. And on the other side of the food chain are popular things that are acceptable. Anything for school use. A lot of what we see is money coming in to pay for field trips for students or for their transportation to the field trip. Student incentives, pizza parties. And then we also see a lot of, I want to give $25 to Mount Airy School, and it's for the principal's discretion. So we put that in a separate fund, and it has a little bit more leeway. Supplies for classrooms, we see a lot. And then once again, technology that, Rob, if you click on the hyperlink there. I'm not going to go through this. I just want to show everybody. Oops, you don't have access. Okay, just kidding. Anyway, there's a document that defines what's acceptable with technology, software, hardware, and we'll make sure it gets posted on the website. I had Jeremy Gollihue, our CIO, send it to me. And so I had access, but when I guess I forwarded it to you, you didn't get it. So, okay, so next slide. So do we want to stop there and ask for questions about anything that's acceptable or not acceptable? And maybe Ms. Roberts can help answer some of those questions.
I have a question.
Mhm.
So I actually have multiple questions. So if we can't take gift cards as a district, if someone says, hey, hint, hint, I'm going to give you $1,000 gift card. We can't accept that. But can a donor give gift cards to be distributed to parents or to be distributed as gifts to students? So the district is not using them, but they're like a pass through. Can we do that? That might be a Lauren and you.
Yeah, I
question.
want to say I would defer that one to Lauren.
Yeah. Wonderful. The first time speaking the microphone this evening again. So I would say that it's generally unacceptable due to the risk of the tracking of how those funds are actually spent. And so when we go back to, as Treasurer Wagner said, the proper public purpose. So if a gift card is passed to a parent, how do we know what that is spent on? And so that could then bridge into things that would not be proper for the public purpose. So that's where gift cards as a whole, we generally have a blanket statement, no gift cards for those reasons, because they are so difficult to audit and to track.
Gotcha.
Good question, though.
I think that was my question. I know that there are a couple of vendors, like one is Chick-fil-A that says, hey, we'll give you a $10 gift card so you can give these to students and they can use it how they want. And I'm like, well, I don't know if we could accept that. And I bugged you, and I think that I didn't tap into Lauren yet. So that would generally not be acceptable. But how would they do that if a person wanted to be able to give our students something as an incentive? How is that best done for the community?
Lauren?
Did
Any
I
idea?
did I stump my
No, just
awesome
ask
team
Jen.
there?
Well, no, so these are all, because they're all, a lot of it has to do with whether they're a vendor of ours. And so is there a relationship with the district? And are they doing it in order to gain more business or to gain business with the district? So we have those laws that we have to follow. There's,
It's happened really with the booster part for athletics. Like, hey,
mhm.
I'll give my own example. As a Withrow LSDMC, they said, hey, we'll pay for food. We'll give you some gift cards so you can give to parents to be able to feed the kids or whatever. So
But what kind of gift cards were they?
They were Chick-fil-A gift cards.
Okay. I probably have to do, for each circumstance like that, we'd probably want to research the circumstances of that event and then and maybe even involve legal counsel on it, because every circumstance is different and people get more and more creative as they go. Not that they're trying to do anything wrong, they're just trying to help
Yeah, the
kids, right?
right?
But our state auditor is really enjoys catching people at doing the wrong things. And so
Gotcha.
we want to make sure that we're not in that case.
Yeah, and I could add in that specific scenario with a booster or other non-school organizations, that's where there is a slight difference, and I'm sure there's nuances to every situation. However, NSOs are separate legal entities, so if they were boosters to do something directly for our students, that would not be directly under our purview, perhaps as a district. So
Okay.
that's where those fine lines and those gray areas really are challenging. However, I think with the partnership of our teams and our wonderful non-school organizations who support our students, we can come to that sweet spot of truly benefiting the students while ensuring no one gets in trouble.
So I'm hearing, hey, gift cards, no, but there may be exceptions. Email and ask a question is what I'm hearing.
Absolutely.
We've got the Treasurer's Department and our internal auditor are the ones to ask. If
Right.
when in doubt, ask.
Yes.
We still want your money though. We definitely need your money, but
Right.
ask the question.
One other kind of thought on some of the things that can be donated as well beyond the gift cards, because I think one of the things we see, or we used to see a lot in the district, is folks offering to pay for transportation or to provide transportation. And I think there's a distinction in the donation of costs to pay for transportation and the idea of them actually providing transportation. And I know that used to be an issue within the state that a lot of folks would get in trouble for, is someone would donate like their church van or donate a bus or something to that effect, and it didn't go through the proper channels of how we transport students or how we ensure that folks are being transported with the right folks transporting students. And so I think one of the things to think about also is when we think about donating services or use of something, that is also still have to comply with how our policies set forth students to do it, or teachers to have access to that materials and that type of deal, or who engages in transportation in alignment with the state laws.
Right. And so one of the biggest concerns I have about the whole crowdfunding thing is that we don't always know what a teacher, and I don't think anybody's deliberately doing anything wrong, but and they may ask for some book that the board has not adopted as part of their curriculum, that could get, cause an issue. Equipment that doesn't comply with our network, requirements. And we actually had a software application a long time ago that almost took the network to its knees because we had really bad network rules or uses. And so because and that software hadn't been properly vetted, which is one of the reasons why we implemented that donation for to be technology approved first. I lost my train of thought. Any more questions on acceptable uses, or those are great questions. Next slide, please. So I also get a lot of questions about, well, if I designate, I want my money to go to Rockdale for the zoo trip, how do I know that that's really how it's being spent? And when donors restrict their donations they give us, we put it in a special account in the general ledger, and it's coded particularly for that school with a special cost center for that purpose. And so we can report out on that, on those things. Also, all of our donations that are over $250 are accepted in the monthly treasurer's report. We used to do it at every board meeting, but I think we're trying to do it monthly now. And then if it's a physical item like artwork or, I don't know, something in the science lab or whatever, then we tag it and we track it through our inventory system. But that also the value also does have to be recognized in the treasurer's report. So we would look up on Amazon or Google something to say, what's the worth of this item, and try to come up with a value to it. Okay, next slide. So these are the two policies. They're both on, well, the 7230 is on board docs is already adopted. If you'll click on the crowdsource funding, I hope you have access to this. Okay. Oh, and I can't read that far. Can you make it like
Yeah.
giantly big? So while he's doing that, one of the things that we put into this policy is that if I'm a teacher in a building and I want to do this really cool cross-curricular project, and I want to ask people to get on Donors Choose, put my project up there and have people fund it. We're simply asking the teacher to vet that through the principal first so that we can make sure that number one, if you're using district logo and any student information as part of that, that it's proper and approved. And then whatever is being asked for is in compliance or in lieu of the curriculum that we have. Or any of our rules, board policies, so that we just don't want to keep everybody out of trouble. Because it's something that, and I did see on a report not too long ago, there were gift cards there. So we have to do a lot of education and then help people understand what the rules are followed. But so I'm going to ask President Sellers if she'll put this policy in her newsletter so that it kind of gets out there and we can do some classes on it. Mike, did you want to add it? Policy writing.
I will say this has been quite the effort to get to this policy. I know I jumped in, I think, a year into it, and it's taken about a year to get here. So yeah, I mean, I think we wanted, to get some idea about what's coming into the district and get tracking, but also not to discourage folks. And so it's really that fine line about, not shutting off the flow of stuff, but making sure the proper people are aware.
So can we talk about who owns the donation?
Sure. That's a good question. I'm sure it'll probably come up. So, and once the district receives a donation, it is property of the district, right? So we do as much as we can follow the donor's intent, right? So if you want, a set of, classroom library books to go to Mrs. Smith at Rockdale, the initial, that's where it will go. But it does become the district's property, if Mrs. Smith retires, we're going to keep it in that school, hopefully in that classroom, but that is a question we get a lot. Anything else?
Yeah, so, and we bring that up because if the teacher moves from one building to the next, it could probably go with the teacher if that was the intent of the donor. But if the teacher leaves the district, it does not, because it is owned by the district, and that's defined by the state auditor, not the district. So, I think those were all the slides that we wanted to share tonight. And so we will entertain more questions.
So I have a question for you, Jen. And I'm asking these questions and I want the public to really understand when Mike says this took a year, we've been battling this for a year. And I don't mean battling in a negative. We've been going back and forth. Board Member Weinberg is a teacher, was a teacher, and Board Member Craig also brought some higher ed experience. I'm just a former teacher and an engaged parent, but I'm a nagger. And so we were really wanting to preserve the integrity of the intention of the donor and the recipient, because we know that that's a pretty big area that people want to give is in the crowdsourcing and the web pages that allow you to give donations. So the intention is to always want your donation and your money. Don't forget. But can a donation be revoked after time? So let's say I know that Ms. Smith is going to retire after 2 years and I'm going to donate a $10,000 piece of equipment, but I only wanted to go to Ms. Smith in her science class. And then she retires after 2 years and we've had that as a district. Can the donor come back and say, I think I want my equipment back? Or is it just, you've given it to us and so now that's it?
I think the legal definition of donation is it's irrevocable.
Besides, you would be an Indian giver, but I want to understand what the mind of someone, if someone wants to specifically give to a teacher or to a program, and then we as a district change that program or the teacher retires, what process do we have? Or what is the?
I was gonna say, I know historically, one of the things that's been part of how they do the donations, which is also why it's great to now have the policy, to have folks do it beforehand, the discussion, because that would be something you would talk about in what they were donating. So I distinctly remember when I, for a short period of time, worked in the general counsel's office, there was someone who donated a bunch of equipment for students with special needs to be used in the district with a particular program. And the idea that they wanted that to only stay with that particular program, and that if that program left, they wanted that to go back to another organization so that they could use it with those same students. Um, and so one of the things that was part of what they negotiated as part of the donation package, right? So they would go through the forefront rather than coming back afterwards and saying, I want to take it back now. They kind of said, we're willing to give this equipment and allow you to have free use of this equipment for these purposes. So I think that's probably more what that's and part of what we would hope people would do with these policies is to kind of go through that same conversation in the forefront, as opposed to what far too often happens in our district, which is somebody does something, everybody's lived with it for a little while, and then we're trying to figure out what to do when that changes.
And I do want to clarify, I did not mean to be insensitive with that statement. So I revoke that statement. That was very insensitive and politically incorrect. I apologize.
No, but I can actually see scenarios where that would happen because district adopts new curriculum, goes with a new program. And so if it's not going to be used for the district, yeah, I could certainly see that as a point. I hadn't thought of that.
So on the front end, to Board
Mhm.
Member Craig's point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Typically.
I think that actually leads a good question from my end of this as well, is that I think one of the things we've struggled with also is that a lot of people have asked questions of like, didn't I just give to X, Y, and Z? Didn't I just donate to blah, blah, blah? And I think, in the past, we may not have always known what they have donated to, because if it did not go through a recognized channel, we didn't know you gave to teacher in X, Y, and Z room. And so I think that's maybe a good thing to highlight about bringing some of the crowdsourcing and crowdfunding into the more central office knowledge basis. But then when folks do ask, didn't I just give $100 for these kids to go do X, Y, and Z? And we go, well, we didn't know. Like, we have no idea what you did.
Well, and I'm sure there's times when parents will come in and say, hey, I bought this microscope for this classroom because you're getting ready to do something. And it's totally innocent and very generous. But we don't know about it. And then, so then we're not compliant by not accepting it officially. So,
What
sure.
happens when that happens? If someone's parent donates something expensive and then we don't know about it. So I guess I have two questions. What happens when that happens? And then are we maintaining a tracking system where people can say, hey, this school or this teacher got X number of donations, like so that people can say, hey, I gave already.
So when they go through the treasurer's reports, they go into our system, and so that we have to know about them in order to report on them and then be able to report out on them. So the first thing to do is we just need to educate, because we don't know what we don't know. And because of crowdfunding, I can see the state auditor, they like to pick like 2 years ago, they spent a lot of time on their audits during the Sunshine Law, looking to see if districts were violating those. And so I can very easily see, because they've been encouraging districts to adopt policies around crowdfunding because it's so popular. And I can see that being a focus of an audit. And so if it were, if they found an anomaly in the audit, then they would probably do a management letter recommendation, or because I can't imagine it's going to be that much money, but in terms of material, to get into like an audit finding, unless they found like a big trend or some kind of fraudulent thing going on, but I doubt it. That's why we're starting with the policy and then educate. So we'll hope.
Yeah, and if I could add, I wanted to speak to two aspects that I think were brought up is doing things on the front end. I think that's really the spirit of this policy the policies is that by educating, informing, and working together on the front end, we can ensure donations, which inherently have such a great intention behind them, go to the place the donor intends. The students can truly utilize them under all of the restrictions and compliance things that districts must follow. So ideally, this policy sets everyone up for long-term success, helps avoid potential issues. And one of the other things we considered as we vetted this policy around crowdsourcing and crowdfunding are just those risks of donors set out to do good. How do they know who they're who they're donating to and that those funds are being used as intended. And so our hope through the administration's implementation of the policy is that there can be a singular point potentially for crowdfunding where donors know I can go to this point and it is going to make it into the right hands. And then alternatively, if we do have community partners who we appreciate and really benefit from all of those donations out there in the community doing things, we can differentiate community partners from who is donating directly to CPS. So I think those are some of the risks we considered as we were putting together. I, as a non-management member, just simply advising policy as an independent person. But that was a lot of the advice we saw from the state auditor's office as well, is establishing these basics so we don't find ourselves in a position we don't want to be in when it should be something really positive.
Any more questions before we go to the public?
I do want to ask one more to both of you, because you've mentioned Ohio Ethics, you've mentioned the auditor. We are responsible to these entities. Can you talk about that? We're not just developing these policies to add aggravation to the community. We actually have a responsibility. So can you talk about both of them that we have to report to? And you mentioned an audit, but I don't know if people really understand what happens.
So there is a state auditor who's elected, right, an elected official, and they're responsible for auditing all districts and government entities in the state. And so we get audited, our financials get audited every year. They subcontract right now to Plattenberg for us. But sometimes their audit team will go and do the audits, but there's too many, there's 613 school districts. They can't audit everyone every year with us, staff. So they subcontract a lot. And so they look for material weaknesses in financial reporting, and they look for material weaknesses in your internal controls to make sure that you're protecting against fraud or theft or misuse of funds. So that's the state auditor. And then we get audited. I think we're up to like 16 audits just this year because we're a big district. And so they like to use state and federal funds as their they have thresholds that they have to go and do. So if you go big district, you get a whole bunch of thresholds, taken care of. So we get audited, we have program audits, we have compliance audits. So we're heavily monitored. And in terms of the Ohio ethics is actually a criminal statute. And Mr. Craig, would you like to speak to that, being an attorney?
So the way the ethics laws work in the state of Ohio, which are somewhat different in other states, but also somewhat the same, is essentially there are different practices that they view as you must be in compliance with, and that failure to comply with could be potentially a criminal act, depending on the nature of it, the extent of it. There are some acts that are more major than others when it comes to ethics violations. I think one of the things to think about with regard to this particular one is that as a state employee, you're limited in what you can accept as a gift for your work. And so that's a big part of also why this is a big change, is that we don't want some of our folks within the district setting themselves up for that potential, you're donating to me. Like, no, you're donating to a program, a class, the school, but not the individual. I think the other big one with the ethics thoughts around the ethics code as well is that we as a district also have certain things that we're supposed to do as a formality to, the work that we do, right? So we have to report certain things out. We have to be clear about how those things are reported. And far often what the ethics code violations that come in are usually things minor, but the bigger ones that hit a lot of districts and that type of stuff is where they're attempting to comply, but have not gone through the appropriate steps or appropriate processes. And so I think of one example with certainly with universities see this a lot more than others, but there are certain people who can do things and certain people who can't at a university. So faculty have a lot more privilege under the ethics code than staff to be able to go out and make money off the work they do. Similar deal in school districts as well, the ability for a teacher to go out and say and do something with regards to teaching a subject or that type of thing those are all things that they're governed by the ethics code. And so donations to come in and have, you come teach at a program, or donating for you to do X, Y, and Z. All these things are stuff that should come through the forefront so we can look at it, work with our general counsel's office to make sure that you're not putting a person in potential harm for violating those rules.
So like one example of an ethics violation would be for me to go to a conference and accept a stipend to speak, but I'm inviting at the conference because of my position with the school district. So if I were to accept a $1,200 stipend to go speak at that conference, that would be an ethics violation. It seems simple, like kind of cool. Yeah, I can $1,200,
The ironic part about that is that if a teacher wrote a book about the subject matter of which they were, teaching, some like English great textbook or whatever, it's not as much a problem as if Jen wrote a book about how to manage the district's finances in that way, because they look at that role and say, this is what your role is not is under the ethics code, not supposed to be kind of benefiting from the knowledge you gain in your role.
right. Right. Another one to be careful of is if you're out at a conference and vendors invite you to dinner, that's not an acceptable thing to do. And so that happens, they try to do that a lot. We were just at a conference last week and, vendors like, hey, you want to go out to dinner? And I'm like, no, thank you. No, call me during business hours and we'll talk. So it used to be a lot more flexible, but they've really come down on that stuff, and they do findings for recovery all the time. A finding for recovery is when they say to the district, you paid a bill that we're saying was not appropriate. And so the treasurer that paid the bill has to pay the money back out of their personal pocket.
Repeat that. The treasurer has to pay the
The
bill.
treasurer. Now I do have a bond that would help me if other people were negligent and did that. But the finding for recovery is against the person who paid the bill, which is the treasurer. Since it's my name on the check.
Yeah,
Well-
and while we're on the topic of Ohio Ethics Commission and we have a captive audience here, I really highly encourage all public officials and employees to visit the Ohio Ethics Commission website. And they have a lot of really helpful, quick and easy trainings, webinars, because ultimately it is our responsibility as individuals to uphold those laws because they are criminal in fact. So we all sit up here and we try to inform and design policies and procedures that keep everyone out of trouble, but ultimately it is the individual's responsibility to be aware of those things. So going back to our previous thread was, if you don't know, ask. And I think that holds so true in this area. And to wrap it back to donations, in the example of we donate to Mrs. Smith, well, if Mrs. Smith walks off at the end of her retirement with those things that you donated, well, that's now a gift to Mrs. Smith and she's in violation of Ohio ethics laws. So that's kind of how we bring all this back together, but certainly stress the importance of compliance.
Lauren, before you give the mic back, when you say ask and you mentioned public officials, that's define who should be
Yes.
asking.
Yes. So if you have a CPS pay stub and a badge and or consider yourself an employee, you are one of those folks. So it's not only just our board, the folks that are appointed, but also every CPS employee. You are an employee of the state. We are trusted with taxpayer dollars to uphold not only the proper public purpose, but also the ethics rules that allow our public to have trust in what we do.
So who should they ask?
Great question. I'm sorry. You can tell I'm trying.
I get to
This is
ask
my
the questions
first,
tonight.
my first town hall. I should get more comfortable. So in terms of Ohio ethics questions, the Ohio Ethics Commission is open for calls. Pick up the phone, give them a call. They're wonderful people there. They will answer your questions. And in fact, the thing that's really interesting, before I take us too far down this rabbit hole, is that Ohio ethics guidance is binding. So if you ask for guidance, you follow what they tell you to do, the Ohio Ethics Commission will stand behind you if any other governmental or other agency has an issue with it. So you are scot-free. So it's like this golden ticket. Why not ask, follow the guidance, and you know that you're going to avoid any issue.
And then don't they let you ask anonymous
Yeah.
scenarios?
Yeah, you can ask anonymous scenarios. And then if if you do have questions, we're all very approachable. Reach out to us. We can help guide you through the process, start the conversation. So if you're in general counsel, of course, general counsel is a wonderful resource for this. So start local. They can help you find us or, reach out to wherever you can find best access.
Thanks, Lauren. You're doing
And if
great for your first one.
You sure are.
There's also, and I think Lauren was mentioning it as well, but there are also actually a number of FAQ guides that are also on the ethics website that go through scenarios. By the way, the gift card scenario is brightly on there. So for folks who have questions about why we keep mentioning gift cards, it's on the ethics page. They're telling you don't do it. But there are other things that I know that a few of our partners around the district have attempted to do in the past, like giving people access to like football tickets, baseball tickets, and things like this as part of their work with the district. Right. And in the private sector, you get this a lot where someone says, hey, I'm your vendor. I got you 2 tickets to the ballet this weekend. Right. Well, in the public sector, we can't do that. And so it's a big thing to think about. If there's someone's a vendor of your school, of your program, before they give something to either the class or whatever, just letting folks know about it so we can determine whether or not it's appropriate or not appropriate based on their relationship with the district.
Board Member Craig, you said something great. If they're a vendor, but what if they're not? What if they want to be a vendor?
Same
Same
thing.
problem.
Same thing. Yeah. And if you ask Board Member Craig or myself or any board member, we're going to point you directly to the people who we have up here in General Counsel Hoyne, because we don't know and we are not going to be legally binding if we give you bad advice. So contact Ohio Ethics and them for sure.
And I will always fall on the most conservative answer just because I don't want to get anybody in trouble either. So, okay, how about questions from the public? And do we have any come in?
Sure. First question is there a specific protocol for soliciting donations?
That's a great question. I think we're getting there. So obviously, we just got the donations policy in place, and just kind of a little inside baseball for how the district works is the board creates policies. And then the administration creates administrative procedures that kind of implement those policies. So don't think we're there yet. I'm sure people do it. I know people, and again, we're still waiting on the crowdsourcing policy to be in place, and that'll have its own procedures. I would say, obviously, talk to your principal, your leader, to kind of start there is probably a good thing. Jen, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, and
Lauren?
I think on our website now, under the donations section, there is a direct link to complete the donations form. So you can complete that smart sheet form. You'll see it. That's the name of the software that's used, and checks and donations can be funneled that way. And I think this is a great opportunity for us to kind of gain the attention of the public to say, please, stay on the edge of your seats, more to come. And we will try to communicate and engage because, of course, in a time when, I won't say the budget word, but revenue is so critical. And really, if you're interested in ways to help and support your schools for causes you really care about, we want to make sure that there's a really solid and well-controlled way for you to do so.
This next one is, would it be possible to consolidate and centralize the asks? District website or something easily found that you can find like on a wish list or like a donor choose projects. And I don't know if
Yeah.
that's a policy related requirement to be able
I
to put
think
that in place.
that's kind of where Donors Choose is going. We don't have an official relationship with them. It's again part of the policy conversation. Once that's done, I think we can create a kind of CPS landing page and coordinate all our schools into one site. So I would say that's what did Lauren say? Stay on the edge of your seat. Stay tuned.
I think one of the challenges that we always think about when it comes to what are donations needed at each school is that we also recognize each school has different needs. And so I do think while we can create, yes, the landing page, I don't know that there will ever be one space where we would just say, I want to donate, the same thing to every school because they all need the same thing kind of deal. I think it'll be more about a place where you can see what the school is needing, what the school may be asking for assistance with through things like donor choice and other ways of recognizing their needs at the school. I think a lot of back to some of our schools have students with very different needs for materials in the classroom, these type of things, and they've historically done that. Each school does their own kind of campaign around like, what do we need donated this year? How many notebooks we need? How many pencils we need? And we've had some really great uh, philanthropists in our city who have donated a ton of resources. I mean, I think of all the stuff we went through and saw when we were going through the schools when they were starting back to school, and the number of folks who donated like entire supply closets full of stuff. Some of which I was like, man, I should have thought about it. I needed some Tide myself. Like, dang. Can't get it though. It's public employee. But we recognize that our students may have different needs that are things that are not just about them participating in the classroom at that moment, but maybe stuff to help them be prepared for the classroom that folks donate all the time. And so it would be kind of a nice, as we think about the donor's choice page and that type of deal, but also maybe thinking about schools being able to communicate that on their pages as well, their efforts to gather new materials to let you know what they already have. I think at UC we have what we call the I'm not going to forget it what the name of it is, but we donate a bunch of resources, and at one point they had a ton of toiletries for folks, and so they were like, we don't need any more deodorant, we don't need any more toothpaste to be donated. I think that's something we can start to, as we stay tuned, we can start to work with our schools to make sure that they're communicating that in the materials that they're putting forward to the public as well.
So I'm going to ask a question because I don't want to get too far from where you all have just gone. This is a good one. This is like a juicy one. Last year we had a donor donate a significant amount of money for student fees. And so I anticipate until we are discussing getting rid of student fees, but until that happens, how should we be doing that if that happens this year? That we have donors that have large sums of money and they want to help students that may have large student fee bills over time. How should that happen? And I have another one, but this is a good one for you all now.
So that individual stopped me in the hallway earlier this year just to asked me to tell him how much was going to be needed. And I told him that we suspended school fees for this year and that to stay tuned, that shouldn't be a problem this year. Because we were investigating whether and one of the reasons we're talking about suspending student fees is because we charge a lot of money for fees and then we end up waiving a lot or chasing after a lot. We spend a lot of money chasing after smaller dollars. And so, but what we don't want to do is hurt the schools that collect a lot of fees because they use that to help with their enrichment activities and athletics. So we're working through those issues. We've often talked in the past with a prior superintendent and a prior board member, Messer, about starting a foundation so that they can do all our fundraising for us and they can take care of the details for us. But we can't seem to stay focused long enough to get it off the ground. And so because I'm sitting here, and I think there's a lot of people out there that would like to donate for specific causes, not just give money, right? And so if we can find a way to consolidate that, I think a lot of people would be a lot more interested. And if we did it in the right way where they could be tax deductible and reportable, and
So how should people that want to help graduating seniors, let's use a specific example. I want to help these graduating seniors at a specific high school pay their fees. How would they do that?
So I would say first talk to the principal and say that, we can get, and then they'll confirm with us and then we can get it accepted in the treasurer's report and taken care of that way.
Would that be a tax deductible donation? Is that like?
Yes, they'd have to keep their own records though. We don't send out 1099s or anything like that for stuff like that, but just a copy of their own receipt or their check.
Okay. my other question is around like booster club donations, because Lauren mentioned non-official agency or entities. And so we do have schools that have foundations, and we do have schools that have athletic boosters. We do have PTOs and PTAs that
Mhm.
donate back. What's the difference with those entities that are not district specific or not, they're using our image, but they're not necessarily going to the district and they're raising money? What's there? So I know I was going to ask you guys two big questions, but we're talking about this stuff, you all, in policy and in budget. And so you all have done an exorbitant amount of work in trying to answer our questions, and we're trying to get this stuff fixed. So I want to say thank you, but I do want to answer that.
This is, yeah, the whole thing was hugely complicated because there were so many what ifs, what, you
Mhm.
know. Those organizations are separate legal entities. And so we have to keep an arm's length transaction amongst that. The issue is that I would ask Mr. Craig about is the student likeness or using the district name without approval. And so if you want to speak to that.
You know, that's been an issue for the district for a long time. I will say that I think there's two parts of that. So one is the student name, image, likeness stuff, and that's actually still also a separate world of stuff now that we deal with. And in that sense, they're not really supposed to be using the school. They're only supposed to be working within processes with students themselves. So I know that doesn't always happen. The other part is name, image, likeness of the district, right? So district facilities, district labels, logos. And I do think there is one where either we would make the arguments there's an improper use of our name, image, likeness of the district, or then we would have to say that they have to comply with the same things we comply with as a representative of us. Right. So if and that's one of the things I think you mentioned earlier about like folks donating to something through a program we might have. Right. So Chick-fil-A says, hey, I want to give out gift cards at the football game. Are they doing that as part of a connection with us, which then they have to be living up to what we would live up to? Are they saying you attended the Withrow football game, come by with your ticket and get a, free gift card? Well, maybe in that instance, it's less connected up to us. Those are tighter, more difficult ones that I think general counsel would be the best place to go to for those answers. But yes, I think puts when our non-school organizations use CPS insignia, CPS references, CPS events to do things, there's more of a question of whether or not they must comply with all that CPS must comply with.
Yeah, and I think there's an opportunity for our donors to just do a few quick steps of due diligence too, in asking the organization that you're donating to, are you a CPS organization directly? Are you CPS or are you a separate entity? And that at least the donor understands who exactly you're entrusting with your funds and what their processes might look like as well.
Good question. How about one from the public?
Can I create my own crowdfunding account through something like GoFundMe and then donate the funds from the money I raised to my school or to support a child or support a teacher for an issue that they might have?
I
We
think it's
actually just talked about that.
can you or should you?
Mike, you want to tackle that one? We just had this conversation.
I feel like it's a lot of what we just talked about here, right? I mean, but instead of being an organization, now you're a person. I think part of it would be like individuals are individuals, right? They can do things, on their own. The question is, how much do you kind of trade on CPS's name, image, likeness, right? If you come and put our logo out there and stuff, then people are going to assume that you're affiliated with CPS, which you're not. I mean, obviously, as Dr. Moffat said, we're happy to take your money. We're happy. We want to bring the donations to us. It's more a matter of how it kind of looks to people. If you say I'm a person, just a concerned citizen, wanting to get money, I mean, we can't really stop you from doing it. I mean, it would be nicer to be kind of integrated with what we're doing. But at the point where you start, using the district's logos or using kids' names or teachers' names, I think that's where we might have some issues.
I think the one exception though is if you are a district employee You cannot do crowdsourcing to you directly based on your relationship with the district. So you can't have a GoFundMe to donate to me, and then I'll give it back to the district. It's not that, that would still probably fall outside of ethics code guidelines.
Hold on. So if you are, I want you to talk more about this. So if you are an employee who has a program, you want to raise money for the program that you run as an employee of the district, is that not acceptable?
I think you can raise money through the methods that we have approved in the guidance and the policies. I think if you choose as an individual to set up your own GoFundMe page where they donate to you, to then you to give back to your program, you run into some concerns. I know this is one that I have seen folks do before, which they'll have their own like private, like 501c3s that they want to incorporate the, well, my 501c3 will raise all this money and then we'll give it to our program. Hold on, if you're doing that based on your position in the district as an employee of the district, that may present some ethical issues. If you're doing it as a parent and you're not an employee of the district, while we probably won't love it that you do it that way, we will still accept the donations to the district.
I asked that question too a little bit because sometimes I get asked out of a tragedy, let's say a parent had passed away and they're at a school community, they're trying to raise funds through funding, and then they're wanting the district to help promote that. So just understanding what is our role as a district, also wanting to support our school community, but understanding that it's a private citizens crowdfunding account.
I'll add one other thought onto that is I know we've seen this a lot where folks, when someone passes, will create like a memorial scholarship fund or these type of things. And I still would say the best thing to do is to reach out to your schools and to the district to ask them how to work in concert with each other.
Right.
Because we have my old high school, we have a scholarship for one of the players that used to play who passed away on the court. And we used to give out a scholarship every year to students. I don't know if we still do it or not, but we worked with the district to set that up and to maintain it in the right order so that we also were able to give it to a student in the right way. And that's a big part of it also, because I think sometimes it's really easy to get the money together and then you have to figure out what to do with it. And instead of just walking over to someone with a big check, which we all love big checks, I'm still waiting on my first big check to come someday, but it is better to work with us to do it as opposed to kind of doing it on your own.
The next question is, I donated items to a classroom. The teacher is leaving at the end of the year. What happens to the stuff?
Is the teacher leaving the district?
Just said leaving at the end of the year.
Okay, so I would liken that to what we talked about earlier. If the teacher's leaving, it's going from one school to the other. It's really at the time of the donation is when to restrict its use and to say, I want this to stay with this class, or I want this to stay with this teacher or this subject or this group of students, like they're going for the 4th grade or the 5th grade. Tell us that up front and then we can do our best to make that happen. But once it's donated to the district owns it, not the individual school, not the individual teacher. And so if that person was leaving the district, they can't take it with them as much as they might like to, or but the state auditor would frown on that.
Other questions, a quick one. Can I use, to donate money, can I use my credit card or Venmo account?
Great question.
That is a good one.
And Mike's team is doing a project.
I like how everyone laughs at that. So Venmo, no. Credit cards, we are working to increase our use of credit cards. Rapidly trying to catch up, I think. So, we recently in the last year put credit card swipers at every school. So schools could start taking credit cards for fees and other things. We also take ACH donations. There's a lot of things you can do. This is, again, I think a common theme is, reach out to us ahead of time. We're happy to work with you. I know we've done some stuff for Mark's team, specifically to make sure we got donations in. So again, reach out ahead of time of what you're trying to do, and we'll try to figure out the best way to make that happen.
How can school foundations take donations, and does the district control how that money is spent?
School foundations can take donations and the district does not control how that money is spent because they are separate legal entities. Now, they can certainly have a conversation and we can make suggestions, but we do not control it. We don't take possession of those funds. These are great questions that are coming up. Okay, we got 5 minutes.
Does the district provide tax documentation so I can claim it as a charitable donation?
We don't. What they could do is make a copy of the treasurer's donation report and a copy of their check or their bank statement, credit card receipt, statement to use as their evidence for charitable donations on their tax.
We also, if you use, I just reminded us, if you use the Smart Sheet, Nation Smart Sheet, you also get an email receipt of your donation. So that's another way.
If the donation is something like a gift or whatever in their conditions and those type of things that we'd put on it, then that might be another way also to, if you had some kind of documentation of your donation and conditions.
There's a form, I remember Izzy Redneck came to me because somebody was donating artwork or music. I can't remember if it was musical equipment or artwork. And we had to figure out what was the right value of it. And we did there was a form that we filled out. So we can do that at the donor's request for circumstances like that.
How do I know the money I donated for a specific purpose is really spent on that purpose?
So as long as it's clear in the documentation when we receive it, we will set up a special general ledger account code that it is only allowed to be used for that purpose. And if they would like evidence of that purpose, we can certainly provide reports where we use them, how we use the money. Like if it's for an event or a program, if it's an ongoing thing, it'd be a little bit harder, but we would certainly do our best to accommodate the donor's request.
I wish to donate some money anonymously. Can I not have my name mentioned in the board meeting minutes?
Absolutely. You can tell us that you want it to make an anonymous donation and we will put it in anonymous donor.
Well, this is a pretty typical one, but what do we do if we want to raise money for my son's baseball team?
Sure. So trying not to sound like a broken record, but most of the time there's already an existing group who kind of is in that area. So, the booster clubs, the PTO, foundation. So I would start there. I mean, probably best place to start is with the school principal and just see what exists. Like I said, most schools have a boosters program that's probably already in that area, already working. And so it'd be a really easy way to partner with them.
This next one's probably from I'm guessing an educator or teacher. Are we allowed to give students a free pizza certificate or does this fall into the gift card category?
Pizza
No, like
readers.
the-
I don't even know what that is.
They have certificates that you can pass out to students for free food. Mhm.
No. Oh,
Yeah.
oh, so I'm from the East Coast and we didn't do that
Yeah.
not in my district.
I think Lauren's got to get in.
I think it would differ from a gift card because it's not open-ended. That certificate's good for pizza. All you're gonna get is pizza. So I think that's a pretty safe bet, especially due to its historical use without issue.
Good question though.
So I think that this has been really, really informative. I think the general, if you want to give money, yes, but we need to figure out work together on how to give it. So I think the general answer is going to always be yes, but we need to figure out how to make it happen. And if it can't happen, then it can't happen legally, but we want your money. We want your time.
All
and
your
we-
money.
We always want money. You notice the 2 board members said that.
And
But
not the
we-
treasurer.
and the treasurer. But we want you to support our schools, we want you to support our students, and we want you to support our staff. And in doing so, from a financial standpoint, we just have to be in compliance with Ohio ethics and the state auditor.
Correct.
So we are working with you to do that. So we want the answer to be yes, we want everything that our students deserve it, but we just have to be in compliance.
Right. And so I would just say, just keep in mind, watch our website because this is an ever evolving situation. There are so many if-then scenarios that we can't answer tonight or we haven't faced yet. New donors choose type organization will pop up and they'll do things differently. So we'll have to figure that out. But so we will do our best to stay on top of it and communicate and teach. And we are out of time. So thank you so much, everyone.
When's the next one?
And May 6th, I believe.
Our next.
May 7th.
May 7th. And what's the topic?
Oh, yes, our preschool promise. Preschool expansion. Because we're gonna have guests, Chara Jackson and a board member from CPP, and then Vera Brooks, our Director of Early Childhood Education. We're gonna be up here with some of our board members. And we're gonna talk about how we're expanding preschool and where those funds come from and the great success that they've had.
So May the 7th at 6 p.m. online or in person. You may have to fight to get in, but we want you here to see everything about Cincinnati Preschool Promise and CPS Preschool.
Yes,
Talk
thank
to
you.
soon.
Thank you for joining us tonight.